But when you get I was going to say conflagration, but at least an intersection of both right-wing policy, right-wing attacks and social media, you end up with a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and responsible governments have to stay focused on the policies that are making a difference, and that's what we've been doing.
Yeah. We had more of that today from Justin Trudeau when he was interviewed. I think it was released yesterday, but it finally showed up from MSNBC, or MSDNC as it's sometimes known. And he was on there with Jen Psaki, who you may recall was Joe Biden's first White House press secretary. And she left the Biden administration, went directly into left-wing media, and she's been having a grand old time ever since. And it's funny, Trudeau should be talking about misinformation, disinformation. What else did he talk about? But he talked about the same things to Jen Psaki. So when we come back, a little bit about... We need a political change. But we also need to resolve to resist. Yes, thank you for subscribing or resubscribing, as the case may be. And give us the thumbs up and the like button. It helps us beat the YouTube algorithm, which I am fighting every day, but I don't complain about it anymore. It's life is what you make it. When you realize that life is what you make it, then you know the secret of it all. So that is so much of what I've had to learn in the last couple of years. And it's nice to be back. We're trying to do 2 shows a day, at least once in a while, maybe once a week, twice a week, maybe eventually twice, maybe eventually 7 days a week. I don't know. We're going to see what happens. And a reminder at the beginning here, Convoy 2.0, or otherwise known as Election Now protest, hitting Ottawa. I will have all the information for you tomorrow in terms of other locales across Canada where this is going to happen. We talked about this morning. I'm not going to rehash it right now. But protest. Don't be intimidated by the possibility that Justin Trudeau could bring down the force of the law on you. Yeah, easy for me to say, right? No, I was out there the last time when the full force of the law did come down. And it was a frightening moment. We didn't know if they were going to be using weapons against us that should be illegal with crowd control. These were hypersonic weapons in terms of sound. And at the very last minute, we thought this was going to happen. Anyway. So Justin Trudeau and Jen Psaki got together. Trudeau's been doing his U.S. media tour as he attempts to say that the Trump tariffs don't mean anything. And we'll get later, Jean Chrétien was on CTV's Question Period. Interview was yesterday. It aired this morning. Wanted to include a clip on this morning, but I didn't get up on YouTube until about 1 o'clock. And Jean Chrétien's not worried about tariffs either. The 91-year-old who looks every day of it is not concerned. And neither is Justin Trudeau. I couldn't believe, I've got a couple of clips with Trudeau here, but it's amazing to me how Trudeau thinks Canada can fight back against 25% tariffs on everything.
Idea of a 51st state is distracting a little bit from a very real question that will increase the cost of living for Americans and harm a trading relationship that works extremely well.
It's not just Canada. He's talking about taking over Greenland and the Panama Canal, in addition to annexing Canada through economic force, as he said. Do you think is this bullying? Is it trolling? Or should we not take seriously his expansionist desires?
No. I think we definitely need to take that seriously. I think from my very first conversations with him way back in 2016, he told me how much he admires Canada, how much he appreciates and likes us. So
I find that hard to believe, especially when Justin Trudeau was the prime minister at the time. But wait for it here. It gets better.
So I think there is a certain amount of flattery in this.
There's a certain amount of flattery in Donald Trump wanting to annex Canada because Justin Trudeau won't do anything about the security. And of course, this $200 billion trade deficit is bogus. But yes, Trump's a good negotiator. There's no question about that. But Justin Trudeau is not. Justin Trudeau is not taking this very seriously. Yes, I think we have to take this very seriously. But then again, I'm not going to do so.
That he thinks that we are as great as we are. He's right. We are great. We're also very, very proud of being Canadian. If you talk to any Canadian, you ask them to define what it is to be a Canadian, they'll talk about all sorts of different things. But one of the things we will point out is, and we're not Americans.
I mean, he's been calling you the 51st governor. Do you take that as a compliment? Does that not bother you at all? How do you feel about that?
I've been in politics an awfully long time. I tend to focus on the substantive things and not on, people choosing.
What substantive things have these issues been for you, Justin? You don't seem to think parental rights are substantive. All you've ever talked about, the only thing you've done as prime minister has been to legalize weed and to invoke the Emergencies Act and talk about free lunch for kids. That's all you've done. You've done nothing substantive in almost 10 years now. And wait for this. No thin skin for me.
Nicknames for me. I mean, if I was that thin-skinned, I probably wouldn't last that long in politics.
You don't think Justin's not thin-skinned? Yeah, I think he is. There's more here.
You're staying on until the party elects a new leader sometime in March, but between now and then the parliament is suspended. So for the American public, for others watching right now who are trying to understand what levers you have if he isn't listening to this rational argument,
what rational argument? He doesn't have a case. He doesn't have a strategy. And listen to how Trudeau just disses the fact that he's supposed to be responsible to the legislature, to the House of Commons. You remember, if you went to school, one thing they probably taught you then, I don't know if they do anymore, but they certainly did in high school history, whereas it was called social studies when I was going through. You learned about responsible government. I think this was about grade 10 or 11. You learned that that's how Canada became a democracy, that the executive branch, the cabinet and the prime minister, were responsible to the legislative branch, the members of parliament. Remember those people? Justin doesn't think they're very important. I can do whatever I want without Parliament, he says.
What are you prepared to do if he actually does this into the first couple weeks of his presidency?
As we did last time, we are ready to respond with tariffs as necessary. You may remember when Donald Trump put tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, which did nothing but raise the cost of steel and aluminum for American consumers. We responded by putting tariffs on things like bourbon, Harley Davidsons, orange juice, playing cards, these sorts of things.
So what is the point of going on U.S. cable television and telling everybody that how we're going to strike back, folks? We're going to put tariffs on Jack Daniels and Jim Beam. Oh, yeah, and Harley Davidsons. Playing cards, orange juice. That's going to decimate the U.S. economy. Yeah. So this is how he intends to negotiate with Donald Trump. All Trump is asking for is a serious national security plan. But Justin can't do that?
That Canadians could find replacements for, so they wouldn't have to pay more for that money. And it ended up causing a lot of loss in American businesses for whom Canada is their #1 export partner. We are the #1 export partner of about 35 different U.S. states. And anything that thickens the border between us ends up costing American citizens and American jobs. That's not what President Trump got elected to. I know he got elected to try and make life easier for all Americans, to support American workers. These are things that are going to hurt them. So as he...
Now, why isn't Jen Psaki disagreeing with this? She doesn't believe that for a minute. Well, it's okay because Justin's saying it.
He's negotiating for more secure borders, which we're going to be giving him, as we're working to make sure that we're creating economic growth that benefits everyone across America and in Canada. We're going to be there as a partner, as we always are. And those are conversations that we will continue to have. But I have all the tools as Prime Minister to be able to respond whether Parliament is sitting or not.
I have all the tools as Prime Minister to respond whether Parliament is sitting or not. Now, does that sound ominous to you? What do you need Parliament for? He can continue doing this for the rest of the year. And if he does decide to resign, and if he is replaced by a new Liberal leader, that new Liberal leader can decide to rule by decree, just like Justin Trudeau is doing here. Think about this for a second, too. If this pirogue is working out so well, what if they try it again? And do you think the Governor General is going to say no? She's already lost all credibility by allowing this prorogation to go through. This had nothing to do with anything except partisan politics and the survival of Justin Trudeau and his government. Yeah. Anyway, third clip, because it's incredible how stupid Justin Trudeau thinks. I guess Canadians and Americans are both equally stupid in Justin Trudeau's eyes.
Let's remember, I got to work with President Trump through his first 4 years in office, and we were able to renegotiate the most important trade deal either of us have, which is the Canada-U.S. free trade deal, in a way that was beneficial to both our countries. And I know that as a successful negotiator, he likes to keep people a little off balance. The 51st state, that's not going to happen. It's just a non-starter. Canadians are incredibly proud of being Canadian, but people are now talking about that as opposed to talking about, for example, what the impact of 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum coming into the United States, on energy, whether it's oil and gas or electricity. I mean, no American wants to pay 25% more for electricity or oil and gas coming in from Canada. That he has concerns about the border between Canada and the United States, particularly around migration and around fentanyl. I was pleased to highlight that less than 1% of the illegal migrants, less than 1% of the fentanyl that comes into the United States comes from Canada. So
how about the terrorists? That's what he never mentions. The percentage of terrorists coming into the United States through their northern border, or in other words, Canada, is about 25 to 30% of the total. So Trump has a point there. Justin Trudeau thinks he's done everything he needs to do for border security. He said that again in this interview. Donald Trump, you can bet if he's not listening to it, the Trump transition team is listening to it, and they're saying, hey, Mr. President-elect, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is not going to do anything more for border security. And guess what? He's going to fight your tariffs with tariffs on bourbon and playing cards. Well, that's going to have a terrible impact on some Sunday afternoon poker parties, but I don't know if that's enough to dissuade Donald Trump, who is coming into office in just almost literally a week from now, as I speak Sunday night here. Monday, tomorrow morning, is the 13th. That's a week away from Inauguration Day. And I can tell you, Donald Trump is going to impose these tariffs. It's going to happen.
We're not a problem, but we're happy to, and we've actually responded to his request for us to do more with billions of dollars worth of investments to even further strengthen the security at our borders.
No, wrong. 1.3 billion over 6 years. That's the fact. Those are the facts, not billions right now. 1.3 billion over 6 years.
Assuming he didn't bring up his intention.
For certain parts, he immediately decided that it was not that funny anymore, and we moved on to a different conversation. So this isn't out of the blue that he's doing this, but my focus has to be not on something that he's talking about that will not ever happen, but more on something that might well happen, that if he does choose to go forward with tariffs that raise the cost of just about everything for American citizens, that on top of that, we're going to have a robust response to that.
I want to ask a couple weeks of his presidency.
As we did last time, we are ready to respond with tariffs as necessary. You may remember when Donald Trump put tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, which did nothing but raise the cost of steel and aluminum for American consumers. We responded by putting tariffs on things like bourbon, Harley Davidsons, orange juice playing cards, these sorts of things that Canadians could find replacements for, so they wouldn't have to pay more for that money. And it ended up causing a lot of loss in American businesses for whom Canada is their #1 export partner. We are the #1 export partner of about 35 different U.S. states, and anything that thickens the border between us ends up costing American citizens. And America bring frustration towards incumbents. And for me, where I lean in on is all the good things we were able to do. We've put forward policies that are going to make a difference for decades to come in Canada. And
I cannot believe anybody can be this persistently delusional. He lives in a bubble of his own making. It's the Justin bubble. And he really seems to believe that he has done something in the last 9.5 years that's been consequential. He's destroyed the country. If that's what he's talking about, if he means it's going to take decades to recover from his administration, well, that's clearly believable. But if he really thinks he has built a legacy of anything except catastrophic economic and social decision-making, I'm sorry. He's leaving Canada in shreds. There's no other way to describe the job that Justin Trudeau has done. But don't let the facts get in the way.
I think right now we're seeing a time in politics where emotions and social media is carrying an awful lot of weight in how people feel about things. But I'm always going to lean back on what are the substantive things that are being done? What are the substantive measures that make a big difference in people's lives? And
yeah, it's the social media. That's what's done him in, as far as he continues to say. Now, we all remember Jean Chrétien, and I can see from the comment section that there's not a whole lot of interest in Jean Chrétien, from at least the people who are commenting. But it's interesting because Jean Chrétien made the comment that the Liberal Party needs to get back to what he called the radical center, which is a stupid, meaningless term. But he honestly believes that the Liberal Party is salvageable. And the comparison he makes to how he said he was behind Kim Campbell by 10 or 15 percentage points in the polls in 1993, yet he went on to win. And that's his analogy to how the new Liberal Party leader could win. Well, isn't it the reverse of that? Kim Campbell was the new Conservative Party leader in 1993, and she did absolutely nothing to convince Canadians she was going to do things any differently or any better than Brian Mulroney in his last couple of years. Canadians were not satisfied with the leadership change. They didn't say, okay, new leader, new game. We can live with this. This is going to make things very different. Apparently not. So Chrétien somehow thinks that should be an inspiration, that Kim Campbell should be an inspiration to Liberals? That the fact that Canadians decided she was no better, and they gave the progressive Conservative Party, those were in the last years of the oxymoronic progressive Conservative Party, they gave the PCs 2 seats in 1993. And that's about what the Liberals are going to get after horrible 9 years. Once again, if there's an analogy here to be made, it's that the progressive Conservatives tried to fool voters by changing leaders, saying it was a new beginning, reboot, restart, didn't work. This is exactly what the Liberals are trying to do with this leadership race, and hope it's all going to be okay. Canadians didn't buy it in 93. They're not going to buy it, almost 30 years, 28 years later?
That the Americans look at Canada. We even had a war in 1812, and we burned the White House. So, I don't take that seriously, because I don't think it will happen. It's not in the interest.
So because we burnt the White House, I think it was 1813, during the War of 1812, that means we don't have anything to worry about U.S. tariffs. Jean Chrétien's thinking as clearly now as he ever did.
Of America not to have a good neighbor like Canada north. And for Mr. Trump, he does not realize that if Canada had been part of the U.S. a few weeks ago, he would have never become president, because the Canadians would not have voted for him.
Well, that's highly debatable. How many Canadians would not have voted for Trump? I don't know. He doesn't know that either. And Canada would have been just another state with the equivalent of California. And I would suggest to you it would have been a tighter race than California, and Trump still could have won that election. But Jean Chrétien's strong point was never math.
And he would have lost clearly the Congress, because there's only 2 or 3 seats. Canadians are not right-wingers a la Trump. The Canadians love our values, they love our mentality, they love the kind of society we have, a much more generous, tolerant society, and we don't have ghettos like they have, and that type of problem.
We don't have ghettos like they have. Well, has Jean Chrétien walked outside of his little ghetto in Ottawa lately? Yeah, I know where he lives, yes. Has he journeyed outside of there? Has he even walked through the market? You want to see ghettos? How about Toronto? There's ghettos there. But no, it's still this vision of Canada that exists on postcards.
We have less poor, and of course less rich than they have. And
we have less poor and less rich. Well, actually, as Pierre Poilievre points out consistently, American workers are making on average 30% more than Canadians. Not the richest of the rich. Working class Americans, average Americans, are making 30% more than Canadians. This man is completely out of touch.
Canadians are very proud. And I read not long ago, there was a poll taken around the globe. And Canada is still the best destination. They were asking the people, if you are to start again your life, where would you like to do that? And the majority were for Canada, way ahead of America. When I was Prime Minister, when I was Minister of Finance, when I was Minister of Trade, I was dealing with the Americans in 1968 when I was Minister of Northern Affairs, and I had problem between Yukon and Alaska. So, there is always some problems. We always resolve them easily. And, apparently he said this morning that he does not need our electricity. Fine. If he wants us to cut off the electricity, he will have to walk up the Trump Tower with candles to go to his office, because the state of New York rely a lot on electricity coming from Canada, mainly from Hydro-Quebec. So it's not realistic.
So we have a huge disconnect here between what Justin Trudeau is saying and what some of his cabinet is saying. We got Melanie Joly telling people that Canada might shut off energy exports, even though she has no right to say that. Energy is a provincial jurisdiction. She can't say that. She can't make that promise. But Justin Trudeau was talking bourbon and playing cards. The cabinet can't even agree on a strategy because there isn't one.
You know, he loves to be in the news, and the news give him a lot of space. But the reality is the reality. And my view is I'm not losing sleep over that, because they will probably suffer much more than we'll do if we have that type of war.
Actually, I can't say I've seen a single analysis, even from the left, which suggests Canada will do better in a trade war than the United States. We are already in a recession. This could create a depression within a week.
Election of 1993, you know, Mulroney, when he quit, he was more unpopular than Trudeau today.
Not actually true. Trudeau's numbers are lower than Brian Mulroney.
And he resigned. I was 22, 23 ahead of him. Kim Campbell came 2-3 weeks after she became the prime minister. She was ahead of me by 10 or 15 points. So there was a turnaround in a month of 35%.
But she ultimately
and
lost.
After that, she faced me, and whoop, you know, she finished.
Yeah, and Vatsy here isn't getting the analogy at all, because she's saying, she thinks he's saying, well, Kim Campbell turned it around for the Conservative Party, and so can our new leader. And she's saying, but Kim Campbell ultimately lost. That's not where Chrétien's going.
She lost her seat, and she finished only with 2 seats. And all that happened in the period of 6 months. You know, everybody was surprised that when she lost her seat, finished with 2 seats, and they had 12% of the vote, something like that. So, you know, things can change quickly.
Do you think that the party should, in this next election, move more to the center? There's a lot of MPs talking about that.
I'm sure they will.
Why are you sure?
Because I've talked to all the candidates, and it is a fundamental condition.
What candidates? There are only 2 official candidates which nobody's even heard of before. He's talked to all the candidates. Nobody wants to be in this race. Actually, it reminds me a lot of the 1993 Progressive Conservative leadership race when nobody wanted the job. That's where Kim Campbell came. She was a nobody. She was a cipher in the party. And yet she took the leadership because nobody else wanted
for the party to come back, to be the radical center, as I used to say. Because it is what has been the Liberal Party all along. When I was leader, I was traveling the world, and they would ask me, because if you're in Europe, a liberal tend to be center-right, but strong on human rights. And in the United States, it's the left. So they would ask me, Mr. Chrétien, what is a liberal in Canada? And I would say, when in Canada, the left says of you, you're a right-winger. And when the people on the right says you're a left-winger, you're a good Canadian liberal Chrétien, the radical center. And I think the party is coming back there, I'm sure.
I will leave it on that note, Mr. Chrétien. Happy birthday once again, and thank you for your time today.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for those little words of wisdom. Incredible how you have never changed. What does the Liberal Party mean? Radical center? No, the Liberal Party means preservation of power. The Liberal Party means staying in power at whatever cost it takes. It means using the mechanisms of government for your own purposes, for your own partisan purposes, and making sure people don't get the right to decide. This is what this is all about right now: prorogation of Parliament, having a leadership race, supposedly coming back to Parliament, which they can prorogue again. It's all about denying Canadians their democratic right to choose their government. That's what Jean Chrétien didn't say, but that's what the Liberal Party is all about. Thanks for watching this second edition of Stand on Guard. I've only done this once or twice before. We'll be doing it more frequently. We'll be back again in the morning with my interview with James Manson. He's the lead lawyer on this case against the Trudeau government, against they're taking the Liberal government to court over proroguing. I've got a lot of other questions to ask him about the Online Harms Act, whether that's really dead with prorogation, and a couple of other questions I think will be of interest to all of you. And he, of course, is with the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. And he's based out of Toronto. We'll be interviewing him 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Be there. Thanks for watching, everybody. Back again tomorrow. Resolve to resist.